Before I begin, spoilers. And up until 5 minutes before showtime, I was the only person in the theater. I don't know how this bodes well for the film's box office though. Going into this film, I decided to judge it on its own merit, at least for the first part of the review. I'm not gonna make any comparisons until later on because this adaptation keeps making reference to the 1995 film. Acting wise, the supporting cast comes off really well and were good in mostly minor roles, aside from Batal. I don't remember any of the other members of Section 9 names in the film, however. Now, Takashi beat Kitano as the chief gave the role gravitas that it deserved. My only problem is, why was he the only person that wasn't speaking English in the film? It's as if the studio was in such a rush to get Asian actors that they figured, so what, he can't speak English in an English-speaking film. Moviegoers won't care or notice. This film raises or falls depending on the main leads, so let's take a look at them. The villains. The head of the corporation was one note and we didn't get an idea of his motivation. He just seemed to be evil just because. The first main villain was a bit better. Its obvious aspects of him were inspired by the Puppet Master from the 95 film. At least we got to know his motivation though. It would have been nice if the film had shown some flashbacks of him to further flesh out his character. Unfortunately, he's not that interesting, and because we don't get to learn more about him and his connection to Motoko and the Major, his character is effectively wasted. The Major. Considering the storyline, Scarlett Johansson seems to be too stilted in the role. I know she's supposed to be confused and questioning her humanity and purpose, but I get the feeling that in some scenes she's supposed to be displaying a particular emotion, and instead of her performance comes off as stilted or empty. Plus, the Major never seemed to have a commanding presence or strong tactical mind that she does in previous iterations. For example, in the 1995 film, while she does question how much of her is human or artificial, she felt like a fully realized character. She felt more on the ball in the comics, TV series, OVAs, and animated films. While some of this can be blamed on the writing and direction, especially the direction, I think a big bunch of the blame has to be put on Johansson herself. I've seen this happen with her in other films, and I can only assume that by now the strength of her performances really hinges on how well she's directed. Music-wise, for the most part, it's not remarkable. I didn't really pay attention to the score except for 3 times. The beginning of the film, the midpoint. At those 2 points, the music was trying to sound reminiscent of the 95 film, but it was its own thing. That was until the end credits where they played Making of Android from the 1995 film. I laughed when I heard that. Why have it in there at all? It would have made more sense to play that at the beginning, when they were actually making the android. But the filmmakers probably felt that they wouldn't be able to get away with that. They probably would think that people would say that they were just redoing the 95 film and not trying anything new. Which leads me to recreating scenes and not doing anything new. Before seeing the film, I assumed that most of the recreated scenes from the trailers were only for the trailers, used as a way to drum up excitement for the Ghost in the Shell fans, which would then make the average person want to see the film. Nope, I was wrong. I don't know why they use them here if you're going to have a different story. I assume the argument could be made that those scenes can be put into any film, but they won't mean as much when you remove the original context that they first appeared in. For example, let's say that Spider-Man Homecoming uses that famous scene from Kraven's Last Hunt. It still would be a good scene, but it meant more in the original story because of what was in it for Peter. He spent 2 weeks digging out of the earth trying to get back to his wife and his family. In that story, Pete had everything to live for, and Kraven felt he had nothing to live for. Anyway, the recreated scenes seem to be there mostly because the director wasn't creative enough to make something that rivals it. Also, they were trying to placate to the 95 film's fans. It comes off a bit patronizing though. That's not to say that having these scenes are a bad thing. I mean, just look at Captain America Civil War. Everyone running at each other at the climax of Cap blocking Tony's blast. These were from the comics and they worked because the Russos were able to create other great scenes. The story, writing, and director. The Major tries to rediscover her past, and the villain's company tries to stop her, meanwhile fashioning her to become the perfect weapon. That's a pretty rote story. It also doesn't challenge the audience. Occasionally the story would try to sound deep by talking about the ghosts, but it was mainly only on a surface level. I can't say that I'm surprised. That's why I assume why Rupert Sanders is the director. If the studio was interested in a nice looking action film, then yeah, he can do that. If they were more interested in, say, a director that wanted to go into the science and philosophical elements of the source material, then they would have went after directors like Neil Blomkamp, the Wachowskis, Christopher Nolan, or Darren Aronofsky. Story and writing wise, there were story points and motivations that weren't elaborated on, leaving some story threads hanging to have the audience think about after the film can be good, except when a good number of the threads are just left hanging. And here's some other things. One thing I did do that I normally don't do is check out the cast list on IMDb. I knew that Paramount had made a mad dash to hire as many Asian actors as possible after the controversy from last year. You can check my previous Ghost in the Shell whitewashing editorial video on what I'm talking about. I saw that Scarlett Johansson was playing the Major, but an Asian actress was playing Motoko, aka the Major in previous iterations. Before going in, I wondered if Motoko would die in the beginning and then Scarlett would play her for the rest of the movie. Or would Scarlett play the Major through most of the film and then get blown up or damaged heavily by the end of the film, and then her ghost would be put into another body and the Asian actress would then be Motoko / the Major going forward. Sadly, it's the former. If it were the latter, then it would have been more interesting and thrown the audience for a loop. Also, it would have had an Asian actress as the lead of a major Hollywood franchise. It would be a win-win. We don't get that, and we also barely see the Asian actress, much less her face, for more than 5 seconds. CGI, costuming, and effects. The overall world design was amazing. Unlike with other parts of the film, the filmmakers did try to be different from the source material. In the comics and animation, the world was futuristic but still grounded. The costuming and makeup effects were on point. Also, the CGI and practical effects mix was so good that I just bought the Art of Ghost in the Shell 2017 art book. And yes, you can get it from me when you can pry from my cold, dead hands. The 2017 film went balls out, and for the most part, the CGI was great. Another great bit was when the Major was going on her deep dive, it reminded me of the sunken place from Get Out. I felt a bit unnerved by it. As far as negatives, occasionally the CGI and or action was shoddy. Example would be the fight with the spider tank. There were times that the Major just didn't look believable. Also, when the Major is captured, there's a fight in the dark where there's quick flashes of light and you can't see anything. It rendered the entire fight pointless. One final thing, after the fight, the villain's look didn't come off well. His CGI looked unfinished, as did when he took off part of the Major's face. I can't give this movie a recommend. It's funny. After seeing the film, I thought it was okay and fun enough. A mod recommend. The thing is, the more I think about this film, the more I don't like it. The film hinges on 2 things: Scarlett Johansson's acting and the writing and the story. The story isn't as smart as it thinks it is and didn't flesh out the characters or further elaborate on more important story points. I remember watching Jeremy Jahns, and he said, along with other critics, that they believe that if you're a fan of this source material, you'll enjoy this film. I disagree. I'm a fan of this franchise, and I believe that adaptations are more for the mass audience than the fans of the source material. Movie studios use the original fandom as a way to fan the flames, or rather free promotion. They can't just rely on the original fandom to make a profitable film. So they need to do things in the film that the general audience would be interested in. I mean, come on, it's not like as if the general audience, after seeing the film, will then pick up the source material. Believe me, I'm a comic book fan and an animation fan. Now, while I don't recommend this film, I do hope it's successful. If it is, then hopefully studios will learn from their mistakes from this film and previous other films and when they try to adapt other Japanese manga and anime, they'll do better. At least here, the studio and filmmakers tried to make a good movie, unlike when Fox tried to make Dragon Ball Evolution. One last thing, if you are considering on seeing this film or have seen this film, whether you like it or not, please go and watch the 1995 original. It's under 90 minutes, a quick sit. It's available on DVD and Blu-ray right now. There's even been a Phantom event to show the original 95 movie. I think they might be doing it again over the next couple weeks. It has a great story, and even if you don't like it, you can talk about it with your friends for hours and will make you think. If after seeing the film, you're still interested and want to check out the other media of it, I gave a rundown of it in my previous video. The comic book is good, but it goes back and forth from serious to a more lighter tone. Well, thank you for listening, and if you have any comments, please put them below. Thank you for watching.